Hello, welcome to another session of Letters to Loved Ones, Broken Glasses and All. I have to read rather quickly because apparently you only get 10 minutes, and I don't know how long these satires are. So we are on Satire 3 with Horace. Hopefully, it's not all about Horace this time. Horace and Horace. Okay, sorry. All right, let's begin. Satire 3. Yes. All singers have some fault. Nothing will make them offer to sing for their friends when they're asked. Yet unasked, they never stop. Sardinian Tigellinus was like that. Even if Caesar, with all his power, had begged him to sing out of friendship to him and his father, he'd have got nowhere. Yet if he chose, he'd cry, "Hail Bacchus," at meals, from the egg to the fruit. Now in a bass, now tremor, from tip to toe of the lyre, the man lacked balance. Sometimes he'd run as if fleeing an enemy. Sometimes walk slow as a man who's carrying Juno's sacred basket. Sometimes he's 200 slaves. Sometimes just 10. One day it was Tetachus and kings and everything royal. The next, all I ask is salt in a shell. A three-legged table, a coat, and however ill-made, will keep out the cold if you get 10,000 or so to this thrifty man content with so little in a week. His pockets were empty, he'd stay awake all night till dawn, then snore all day. Never lived so inconsistent a creature. Well, someone might say, and what about you? Have you no faults? Yes, others, but different and lesser. Perhaps when Menius once savaged absent Novius, someone said, "Look at you," or "Do you think to pretend we can't see you too?" He answered, "Oh, myself I pardon. Such stupid and shameless self-love deserves to be censored." When we consider our own faults, we accidentally blind our eyes with a smear of ointment, but viewing our friends, we're keen-eyed as eagles or Epicurean snakes. The result is that they gaze just as keenly at ours. The man a bit hot-tempered, not acceptable to today's sensitive folks. Another makes you smile, with his rustic haircut, his sloppy toga, loose sandals that barely stay on his feet, and yet he's a good man. Beneath that form, in short, gives you a good shaking, and consider whether it's nature or perhaps a bad habit that long ago sowed the seeds of wickedness in you, for the bracken we burn springs up in neglected fields. Think of the case of a lover in all his blindness, who fails to see his darling's ugly blemishes, or is even charmed like Balbius, whose Hagna mole I wished we erred in the same way with our friends. And morality gave us such air as a decent man. We should have behaved to a friend as a father to son, and not be disgusted by some fault. If a boy squints, his father named him Pietius, or Pullus, if he's puny like the dwarf who used to exit, called Sisyphus. Varus, if he had a crooked legs, or if he can barely stand on a twisted ankle, gives him the cognomen Sicarius. Well, then, let's call a friend who's mean, thrifty, another who's tactless and boasts a lot. He just wants his friends to think him sociable. Or perhaps the man's more fierce and outspoken. Let's have it. He's frank and fearless. He's a hothead. Well, we'll count him one of the eager. This is that unites friends and keeps them united. We turn virtues themselves upside down in our desire to foil a spotless jar. The decent man who lives here among us, who's an utterly humble soul, we call him slow-witted, thick-headed, another who flees all deceit and who never offers a single loophole. Making sure it was recording. I did this once and I wasn't recording. Is keen and accusations flourish. Instead of noting his common sense and caution, we call him false and sly, one who's unsophisticated, as I've often shown myself to be with you, Maecenas, interrupting you, perhaps while reading or thinking with tiresome chatter. We say he quite lacks social graces. Ah, how casual we enact these laws against ourselves. No man alive is free of faults. The best of us is him who burdens with the least. Sorry, the last thing is obviously still in my head. Goats, yeah, he said goats. with my faults and inclined to more numerous, assuming that is my virtue, are more numerous, and by that rule I weigh him in the same scale. If you really expect a friend not to be offended by your boils, pardon him his warts. It's only fair that he forgives who asks forgiveness for his faults. So if the vice of anger and all of the other faults that cling to fools can be wholly exercised, why then does reason not employ her own weights and measures, and curb each offense with appropriate punishment? If a man were to nail his slave to a cross for eating leftover fish and cold sauce from the dish he's been told to remove, sane men would call him madder than Labio. Well, how much greater and more insane in a fault is this? But you ever have those days where you can't word things out? That you thought ungracious not to have pardon. You hate him savagely and shun him as Rousseau is shunned by his debtor, who, when he is unhappy, Kellens, come if he can't, poor wretch, rustled up principle or interest from somewhere. He has to expose his throat and listen to those sad histories. So what if a drunken friend drenches the couch, or even knocks a bowl that must have been touched by a vendor's own finger from the table? Should he be less of a friend? In my eyes, even though he may have reached for the bird, or in my side of the dish, what should I do then, if I should commit a theft, betray a trust, or even disown his word? The Stoics, who thinks all sins are much of muchness, struggle to face in reality all tradition and feeling rebel, and expediency too, mother almost of fairness and justice. When the first living creature crawled on primeval earth, mute, formless beasts, they fought for their food and shelter, with claws and fists, and then with sticks, and so on up, fighting with the weapons that experience has forged, until they found words to give meaning to feelings and cries, then names. They began to shun war. They started to lay down towns and lay down laws by which no man might theft, begrade, or adulterer. Even before Helen's day, oh, I love his wording, cunts were a dire cause for battle, but those who snatched precarious love like beasts and were killed like a bull in a herd by a stronger bull died an unsung death. If you want to study the record of those past ages of the world, you'll be forced to accept that justice was created out of fear of injustice. Nature can't distinguish between right and wrong, as she does between sweet and sour, attractive and hostile. And reason can never show it's the same offense to call fresh cabbages out of a neighbor's garden, and then to steal a god's sacred emblems by night. Let's have rules, to lay down fair punishment for every crime, lest we flay with the terrible whip that merits the strap. There's little fear in your punishment when the cane, one who deserves worse, given you say that theft is a bad highway as a highway robbery, and use the same hook to prune all crimes great and small. If only men gave you royal powers, if the Stoics say that the wise man's rich, uniquely handsome, a brilliant cobbler, a king for sure, why do you need to be given what you already have? That's not what Cyprius meant. They cry without making. Sandals or shoes, the wise man is still a fine cobbler. What? Just be as the silent Hermengius is still the best singer and player, and clever Athenaeus, when he'd throw away all the tools of his trade and closed up his shop, was a barber still. So the wiser man alone the master of every role, and so a king, O mightiest king, O mighty kings. Mischievous lads plucked at your beard, and unless you drive them away with your staff, the crowd all around you jostle, while you poor wretch, fume and snarl. To be brief, while you, a king, go to your public bath without a single attendant to keep you company. But stupid Crispinus, my sweet friend, will forgive me if I, a fool, commit such crime, and I'll tolerate gladly in turn all their shortcomings. I'll live more happily than your majesty, a private man. Well, I don't have anything to say about this, except my glasses are still broken, but I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you next time. Take care.